God, the loving creator of the universe, has made promises to you. These promises are like a treasure chest filled with hope and blessings. Sometimes it may feel like these promises are taking a long time to come true, but God is always faithful. He is not forgetful or slow. Rather, He is patient, waiting for the perfect time to fulfill what He has promised. In the Bible, there are numerous stories of people who had to wait patiently for God's promises to unfold. One such example is Abraham. God promised him descendants as numerous as the stars, but Abraham and his wife Sarah were old and childless. It seemed impossible, but God kept His word. In due time, Sarah became pregnant, and they experienced the joy of parenthood. Similarly, you may be facing situations that make it hard to believe in the promises of God. Life is full of challenges, and it's easy to get discouraged. However, God's promises are not empty words. They are like seeds planted in the soil, and with time, they will sprout and grow. Your role is to be patient and trust that God is working behind the scenes. Patience is a virtue that is often tested when waiting for God's promises. It's like waiting for a flower to bloom. You water it, nurture it, and wait. You cannot rush the process, but when the flower finally blossoms, it's a beautiful sight. Similarly, when God's promises unfold in your life, it will be a testimony to His faithfulness. It's important to remember that God's timing is different from ours. We live in a fast-paced world where everything is instant, but God operates in the realm of eternity. His plans are perfect, and He knows the best time to bring His promises to fruition. Your role is to wait with a hopeful heart, knowing that God is never late. Waiting for God's promises can be challenging, and doubts may arise. However, remember that doubt is like a cloud that obscures the sun. Even when you can't see the sun, it's still shining behind the clouds. Similarly, even when you can't see the fulfillment of God's promises, trust that He is working on your behalf. The journey of waiting is an opportunity for growth. It's a time to develop patience, perseverance, and trust in God. Just as a butterfly goes through a process of transformation in the cocoon before emerging in all its beauty, your waiting period is a season of preparation for the fulfillment of God's promises. In the waiting, take time to seek God and deepen your relationship with Him. Prayer is a powerful tool that connects you to the source of all promises. Pour out your heart to God, express your hopes, fears, and dreams. He is not only interested in the outcome, but also in the process and the person you become while waiting. Sometimes, God's promises may not align with your expectations. His ways are higher than your ways, and His thoughts are higher than your thoughts. Trust that what He has planned for you is far greater than anything you can imagine. Surrender your desires and expectations to Him, knowing that His plans are for your welfare and not for harm. It's easy to lose hope when the waiting seems endless, but remember that God is not limited by time. He is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. What seems like a delay to you is just a moment in God's eternal timeline. Your story is a part of a much larger narrative, and God is orchestrating every detail for your good. In the process of waiting, focus on gratitude. Count your blessings and reflect on the goodness of God in your life. Gratitude shifts your perspective from what you lack to what you have. It opens your eyes to the miracles and blessings that happen every day, reminding you that God is faithful in both big and small things. While waiting, surround yourself with a community of faith. Share your journey with others who can encourage and support you. Just as iron sharpens iron, the presence of like-minded individuals can strengthen your faith and help you endure the challenges of waiting. Together, you can celebrate the victories, no matter how small, and remind each other of God's promises. God's promises are like a roadmap for your life, guiding you towards a future filled with hope and purpose. These promises are not empty words, but are rooted in the character of a loving and faithful God. As you navigate the journey of life, it's essential to understand that the fulfillment of God's promises is a process, and patience is the key to unlocking the treasures He has in store for you. Looking at the stories in the Bible, we find that God's promises are often fulfilled in unexpected ways. Take the story of Joseph, for example. God gave him a dream that he would rise to a position of authority, but Joseph faced betrayal and hardship before seeing the fulfillment of that dream. His brothers sold him into slavery, and he was unjustly imprisoned. Yet, through a series of events orchestrated by God, Joseph eventually became a ruler in Egypt, exactly as foretold in his dream. This narrative teaches us that the journey towards the fulfillment of God's promises may include challenges and detours. It's in these challenging times that your faith is refined and your character is shaped. Instead of viewing obstacles as roadblocks, see them as opportunities for growth. God is not only interested in the destination, but also in the person you become along the way. Furthermore, waiting for God's promises requires active trust. It's not a passive waiting, but an active, expectant anticipation of God's faithfulness. Think of it as waiting for a letter in the mail. You check the mailbox daily, knowing that the letter will arrive. Similarly, actively wait for God's promises, knowing that He is faithful to His word. This active trust involves daily surrender and reliance on God's wisdom and timing. The concept of God's timing is crucial in understanding the fulfillment of His promises. God operates outside the constraints of time, and His timing is always perfect. This means that what may seem delayed or overdue to you is right on schedule in God's plan. Trusting His timing requires a shift in perspective. Instead of being fixated on when the promise will be fulfilled, focus on the certainty that it will be fulfilled according to God's perfect timing. Patience is not just about waiting. It's about how you wait. It involves maintaining a positive attitude and faith even when circumstances seem contrary to what God has promised. Remember, God's promises are not contingent on your circumstances, but on His unchanging character. So, whether the situation looks bleak or hopeful, hold on to the assurance that God is faithful to fulfill what He has spoken. The waiting period is also an opportunity for self-reflection and alignment with God's will. Sometimes, impatience can lead to taking matters into your own hands, as seen in the stories of Abraham and Sarah. God promised them a child, but as the years passed without fulfillment, they decided to take matters into their own hands. Sarah suggested that Abraham have a child with her maidservant Hagar. This action resulted in conflict and complications. The lesson here is that impatience can lead to unintended consequences. Instead of trying to rush the process, use the waiting time to seek God's guidance and align your desires with His will. Surrender your plans, fears, and doubts to Him, allowing Him to work in and through you during the waiting season. Moreover, waiting for God's promises is an invitation to deepen your relationship with Him. It's a time of intimacy where you draw near to God in prayer and seek His presence. Prayer is not just a means to ask for things. Prayer is not just a means to ask for things, but a conversation with the one who holds the universe in His hands. Share your heart with God, express your hopes and fears, and listen for His guidance. This communion with God strengthens your faith and builds a foundation for the fulfillment of His promises. In the waiting, cultivate an attitude of gratitude. It's easy to focus on what you lack or what hasn't happened yet, but gratitude shifts your perspective. Take time to reflect on the blessings and miracles in your life. Every day is filled with small victories, moments of joy, and expressions of God's love. Acknowledge and appreciate these blessings, knowing that God is actively involved in every aspect of your life. While waiting, surround yourself with a community of faith. Share your journey with others who can provide support, encouragement, and accountability. Just as a lone tree is vulnerable to strong winds, being part of a community strengthens your resilience. Celebrate each other's victories, share in each other's struggles, and remind one another of the faithfulness of God. Together, you can navigate the waiting season with hope and assurance. It's important to acknowledge that God's promises may not always align with your expectations. His ways are higher, and His thoughts are loftier than yours. Trust that His plans for you surpass your understanding. Surrender your expectations and desires, embracing the truth that God's vision for your life is greater than anything you could imagine. In conclusion, God is fulfilling the promises He has for you. The journey of waiting is not a passive, idle time, but an active season of growth, trust, and alignment with God's will. As you wait, embrace the refining process, trust in God's perfect timing, and actively cultivate patience and gratitude. Your story is part of a grand narrative, and God is the author who is working out every detail for your good. So, be patient, for the best is yet to come, and God promises will unfold in your life in ways that exceed your expectations.